Okay, welcome back, everybody, and continuing with the sixth Shore and Partners Uranium Conference. So our next speaker is probably knows no introduction to this audience. So I'm sure we're very familiar with Brandon Munro, who is the CEO, Executive Chairman these days. Brandon, I made that change last time. So Brandon Munro, the Executive Chairman of Bannerman Energy. Brandon moved into that Executive Chair role earlier this year, and Gavin Chamberlain joined the CEO role. A very experienced builder of uranium mines. Brandon's the brains behind getting it to this point and getting all the financing and strategic work done. So, look, for those who aren't familiar, Bannerman is developing the Atango project in Namibia. It is an enormous resource of uranium. It's, I think, the second largest of the ASX-listed uranium producers in terms of the size of the resource. It's a project that not only will be large, it's scalable, can grow into this market growth that we've heard about this morning. And Brandon, you've kept this project moving along extremely well during the downturn of the last 10 to 15 years. You've just got to the point now where perfectly timed with this demand dynamic that we've been hearing about all morning, and Atango is a matter of potentially weeks away from a final investment decision. So over to you with an update on where you're at.
Thanks, Andrew. Much appreciated. Great to be back on again. And speaking of timing, how good's your timing? You've once again seemed to have nailed it. I think this whole sector is going to start trading according to your plans around the next uranium conference. It's also a great time to be talking Bannerman in terms of timing, because we're now in construction with our Atango project, and I've got a few nice little photos to share with you just to show how much is happening on the ground. I'll just share my screen. Okay, Andrew, is that working?
It is working indeed. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. So for anyone new to the Bannerman story, as Andrew says, we do have an enormous resource in Namibia. You can see where we're located on the map there, closest to infrastructure, including key population centres, the Swakopmund and Walfish Bay. It's been strongly de-risked since its discovery in 2006, and we find ourselves now fully permitted. Construction has commenced. We're on a pathway to development, and quite frankly, after a long time during the bear market, we've now found ourselves with the timing that could not be better for the way that we've positioned this project, and the opportunities are in front of an incredibly vibrant uranium sector going forward. Quick corporate snapshot. We've got a market capitalisation a little over $500 million Australian dollars with good solid liquidity. You can see from that share price graph that the last couple of days of momentum have helped us on with the rest of the sector on our way back to writing new highs, which I think we'll see in the relatively near term. Very strong board, good institutional backing, and puts us in an ideal position with $100 million in the bank, no debt, and a lot of options in terms of what we want to do next. So what are the key points about Atango? Well, look, I can't say enough how much of an advantage it is to be in Namibia. We've got all of our permits. We've also got a very strong social license to operate that we've built over more than a decade. And I spent 6 years living in Namibia, so I can attest to the strength of the community and government relationships there. We've now put ourselves in a position where we do have a very skilled development team who has deep experience where it needs to be. And me standing aside for Gavin Chamberlain was an important part of creating that leadership, and also allowed Gavin to start attracting high quality individuals with relevant experience out of the Southern African mining sector. Fully permitted, very strong technical and commercial viability, which I'll talk to you about. One thing that's important with the Atango is it's highly conventional, very simple, and it's been technically de-risked. We will quite literally be the simplest, most boring uranium mine that comes into production in this entire sector. And that's a big advantage for a sector that's predominantly driven by utilities who are very good at producing power and have very little experience and comfort around the concept of mining. Very long track record of responsibility and sustainability, and we're leveraging that to produce some tremendous impacts in country as well as globally. So Namibia, what really makes it special is it's been exporting uranium for 45 years. The government's comfortable with it. Local people are comfortable with it. It's produced nothing but benefits to the country. Namibia is a very stable place, but it's in Africa. It has a strong development agenda. It has serious challenges to do with health, education, and poverty, and that's where uranium mining is playing a big role. Strong, clear mining code that hasn't been tinkered with since the country became independent 30 years ago, and the government regularly loses court cases. It's a strong rule of law with a Germanic history, which adds to the efficient administration. And very pleased to say that we had Andrew back on site just recently to experience all of that for himself. I'll spend a moment talking about the team. We're at the point with this company where the rubber must meet the road. We're constructing, and we're very aware as a board and as a management team that this is a point where execution risks need to be managed in an astonishingly good fashion. And we've got the right people to do that. Gavin Chamberlain has been building mines in Southern Africa and other parts of Africa for 30 years. His most relevant experience was he was the project director for the Husab uranium mine. Still the largest mine in Africa, one of the largest mining developments on the entire continent in uranium in Namibia. Highly relevant experience and excellent reputation in the sector, and we're seeing that tangibly in the quality and nature of the hires that he's starting to make in building out the team. Steve Hurley, he's our Chief Financial Officer. Very strong operating experience going back to senior roles, including on BHP's global strategy and leadership team. But he's also done his time in the small end of town as well, worked with micro caps and small caps at the entrepreneurial side. So we like to think we get the best of both worlds. All of that systems and operational experience coming out of a large international company, together with being nimble and agile as a result of his experience working with smaller groups. Olga Skolyakova is our VP Market Strategy, 15 years of direct experience in the nuclear sector and additional experience before that. She's done everything from selling enrichment into the US to producing World Nuclear Association's supply and demand modeling and publishing the flagship nuclear fuel report. Exceptionally well known and liked in the sector, and a deep experience, not just in selling uranium, but across the entire nuclear fuel cycle. Werner Ewald's been with us since 2010. He was the mining manager at Rossing. It's no exaggeration to say he's a pillar of the local community in Swakopmund, and he brings to the role a tremendous amount of local trust from the government, from the local community, from the environmental sector. And he's a personification of the culture that we've established at Bannerman, as well as bringing a raft of really crucial technical and leadership skills, particularly in mining, which is our largest cost. And finally, Mike Leach was the managing director at the Rossing uranium mine when it was the largest uranium mine in the world. He's a honorary life member of the Namibian Uranium Association, former chair and president of the Namibian Chamber of Mines, and an elder statesman in Namibia, based in Swakopmund, 20 minutes from our project. Now, I spent a few moments on the management team because what's really important for us is that we've got deep experience in Namibia, deep experience in project construction, delivery and operation, and deep experience in uranium. We've achieved that with our key hires, and then we can draw on the relatively deep pool of talent in the Namibian mining sector. With Deep Yellow, we will be the 4th and the 5th uranium mines in Namibia, and it's a vibrant mining sector that has a lot of people that are quite happy to circulate once you've got the key leadership positions filled, as we now do. I won't dwell on the fact that we're fully permitting, except to say this is the holy grail of uranium mining. It is the key bottleneck that holds up projects, that adds to their risk, that adds to their unpredictability. And so it's vital that we now have all of the environmental, mining, and heritage permits in place. So a quick overview of the project economics. We would be putting 8 million tonnes per annum through the circuit at a head grade of 240 ppm initially for 15 years. And I'll come on to the expansion of that. That will produce 3.5 million pounds per annum. So a big project in its own right, attractive cash operating costs, and attractive pre-production capital. What's really important to understand here is these are current costs. We released a controlled budget estimate, which was a ±10% figures for both operating and capital costs only a few months ago. So they're up to date. They've got a high level of confidence. Our capital cost is 80% backed by responses to tenders. And so that gives both you as an investor community, but also us as the developer, a lot of confidence about our economics going into this next phase. You can see from this slide that it gives us outstanding price leverage. Not only we look good at $80 where we are at the moment, we look great at 95, and we offer superior leverage to uranium price outcomes anywhere between 95 and Andrew's target at 150. We've added to that base case a Tango 8 development by considering how do we expand further into this enormous ore body. A Tango 8 only consumes 60 million pounds of a 200 million pound resource that's open at depth and it can access satellite deposits. So we looked at two scenarios. The first was to expand a Tango from 3.5 million pounds to 6.7 million pounds. That's a Tango XP for expand. The second is a Tango XT for extend. We would simply continue the same throughput, but extend it to a pit shell of the same size. So you can see 95 million pounds. Excellent financial results. I'll leave you to have a look at those, but we see significant uplifts in all of the key financial metrics through implementing either the expansion, which requires extra capital when we undertake that work, or the extension, which doesn't require extra capital and just continues absorbing almost half of the current resource. This presents a couple of key strategic opportunities. Most importantly, we've got the capacity to expand our production at a time when we anticipate the supply-demand deficit will really bite in this sector, and our stakeholders will be begging us to produce more production at commensurately high prices. But we've got the option to do that. If the world doesn't work out that way for whatever reason, we can keep producing without further investment and obtain the attractive results that you can see from a Tango XT, the extension. That flexibility is our choice and our choice alone. The mine doesn't rely on us commissioning the second phase for its viability in any way at all. It's entirely our option, and that enhances our natural leverage even further. It's very conventional, as I said before. This is our demonstration plant. We've run it for several years to demonstrate to anyone's level of skepticism how effective the heap leaching operation and the heap leaching metallurgy is at this project. And once you understand that, you realize it's very simple, it's very conventional. It's open pit, it's outcropping at surface, so the stripping ratio is very low, particularly in initial years, straight onto the heap, and then out through IX and nanofiltration circuits that have been thoroughly proven around the world. Very strong sustainability and impact. And I talked earlier about the timing and why it's such an exciting time to be talking to the investment community about what we're doing here. Because we're in construction and we are holding the reins. We are determining precisely the exact direction that we take this construction. Now, what do I mean by that? well, we call it the phased greenlight approach. We've got the cash, we've got the runway, and we've got the construction strategy to be able to progress this project at a timing of our choosing. That enables us to maximize and optimize the opportunities that this market is presenting. Do I think that this sector is presenting its potential at $80 a pound? Absolutely not. This sector has a significant amount of additional potential that will be presented through market signals, including pricing and long-term contracting terms and conditions. And we aren't under any pressure from any direction to develop this project without being able to optimize that. Shareholders have been in this journey since 2006, and I can assure you we aren't going to become impatient at the very last moment with the decisions that truly lock in shareholder value into the long term. Having said that, we've put ourselves in a position where we're very nimble, and we do have a construction timeline that would have us producing first pounds in 2027 and delivering first pounds to the market in 2028. We've completed the access road, as you can see there. Another shot of the type of construction that was required for that access road. Completed the water pipeline for the temporary water required for construction. And you can see now that's the laydown contractors camp that's being established after we've awarded the 24-month bulk earthworks contract. All of this has gone very well and on time, ahead of budget. And I think that's a good indicator of how we plan on running this entire construction. So finally, before we have some questions, the roadmap to production. So we're engaged in contracting and financing at the moment. Construction has already proceeded with front-end engineering and design, site road, temporary water, and we're now engaged in detailed design, bulk earthworks, and internal roadworks on the actual mine project. The next major steps are the building the mine and the infrastructure, including the heap leach and IX processing plant. For us to proceed with those, we will need a financing solution. We've been engaged now for some time with our strategic financing, and we've announced this morning that, consistent with our phased greenlight approach, we're quite willing to allow the FID timeframe to move into 2025. And that enables us to write contracts of our choosing, not according to an arbitrary timeframe that would otherwise risk driving us in the wrong direction prematurely at a cost to long-term shareholder value. As I say, if that final investment decision comes in that timeframe, we would expect to be ramping up during 2027, producing at 3.5 million pounds, and then considering an expansion opportunity towards the end of this decade, which would have us producing 6.7 million pounds, and then becoming most likely a top 10 producer in the world in the uranium sector. So we've got a couple of appendices there, but I think what I might do, Andrew, is stop and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, terrific. So a great overview, Brendan. Look, I really admire the sort of the flexible approach you're taking to the whole thing. You know, maintaining that optionality, maintaining the value. You know, clearly we've been through a bit of a hole in equity valuations the last 3 or 4 months, which has sort of slowed things down. And keeping your options open is an entirely sensible way to go. Can you just talk us a little bit about your approach to the offtake agreements and that strategic potential element to that? I mean, who and what you, I mean, obviously you can't talk too much about it, but who and what you're engaging with, and how you're keeping that flexibility to make the decision at the right time?
Well, we've been engaged extensively with utilities. It's been an ongoing process for some time, but I think the key moment for us was appointing Olga Skolyakova, who knows all of the utilities through various things that she's done, including at World Nuclear Association. Having her on board was not only a statement of intent to the utilities from ourselves, but also enabled those discussions to take a different path. And she's talking individually with all of the key fuel buyers, finding out what their needs are, finding out if they've got any restrictions on how they plan on buying or even logistical, that can impact how they would fit into our strategy, and advising them in a very transparent way about where we're at and what our expectations are likely to be. So it's a strong walking start. The contracting market, as we've heard, it could be characterised a bit by a standoff at the moment. The utilities have indicated to producers what they're prepared to buy, and producers have indicated on the whole, mostly, to utilities that they're not prepared to sell at that level. So, and we find ourselves in a similar situation to those other producers, with the advantage, as I mentioned, that we've got time on our side, we've got flexibility in the way that we can develop, and flexibility because of the very strong cash balance and balance sheet that we've got. So we're in a position to be ready, able, and organisationally established for the complexity of writing those contracts. And it's really just a case of seeing the conditions that would bring us into writing initial contracts. From there, we've got the advantage of a large production base from which we can slowly layer in contracts into ever-increasing anticipated uranium prices and terms and conditions. Where I have a whole lot of additional comfort is because of the expansion option. Let's say in 5 years' time, Brandon Munro and Andrew Hines ended up being terribly pessimistic with their $150 uranium forecasts. I'm not going to have any regret cost, and neither are our shareholders, because we can still capture that market potential through bringing on a very low risk expansion in the form of expanding our brownfields or our existing mine at that point.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Brandon. Terrific, great overview. As I said, the way you're approaching this is spot on, keeping the flexibility there, and no doubt, this next wave of the cycle, we're going to see Etango hitting FID and coming into the market as one of the only. I think you can count them on one hand, Brandon, the number of fully permitted new uranium projects that are actually going to be developed in this next cycle, and Etango is clearly one of them.
Great, thanks, Andrew, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Terrific, thank you, Brandon.